Good morning. We're thinking about love and disappointment, and I want to reflect back on Jeremiah 17, verse 1 again. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron, with a point of diamond. It's engraved on the tablet of their heart. Their sin has been embedded, it says. Of course, that's helped foster a very disappointing relationship with the Lord. That sin is not only engraved on the tablet of their heart, the text says at the end of verse 1, and on the horns of their altars. Now, the Israelites would worship and sacrifice on the altar on each corner, one corner, one corner, one corner, one corner, 4 corners, would have a horn coming off it. The blood could be dripped down that horn in sacrifice, and it's a picture that worship, the most intimate sacrifices of worship coming before God, have been sullied by their sin. See, in a disappointing relationship with God, where maybe you feel like, as the Israelites I think felt at times, especially when they got headed out to exile, as is evident in this context, as will come God's judgment upon them, it's easy for them to be disappointed with God. It's easy for them to fail to meet the lawful expectations of God. And so that disappointing dynamic that sits there, that has sullied them as they come to worship. As they come to worship. You might feel disappointed with something in your life. You might be frustrated with God. Perhaps that is causing you to feel unmotivated to worship Him. Perhaps that's producing a kind of cynicism that's really sinful in your life. See, we saw yesterday not to deprive God of His rightful place in our hearts, not to disappoint Him, not to pull Him down in our disappointment. And let's not deprive God of His rightful place in our worship because of our disappointment. He is the one who's to be worshipped. He's the one to be praised. See, in Israel's history, they were known for, at times, a kind of syncretism. Remember the high places? In fact, in another verse or so, he'll address, 2 verses down, he'll address the high places, where the Canaanites worshipped, Israel came in, conquered them, then utilized those same places and locale for the worship of Yahweh. God saw that as a kind of syncretism, where this worship was sullied because it still had the fragrance, if you will, the leftover remnants of idolatry. And God didn't want any part with that. There's been discovered ancient inscription that shows that has the phrase Yahweh and His Asherah. Asherah was the female goddess of fertility. Is it possible that there were people who were engaged in a syncretistic worship of Yahweh that included Yahweh and His female fertility goddess? Of course, it's possible. It may just be a reference. Asherahs were also a reference to a wood pole of some kind. So it may be a reference to that. But nonetheless, one of the things that we know from Israelite history is that syncretism plagued them at times. Well, you'll bring the worship of God low in your own life. You'll syncretize it with your own agenda. You'll syncretize it with self-deification. You'll syncretize it with not an Asherah, but with work. Not an Asherah, but your family. Not an Asherah, but money. Not an Asherah, but your recreation. Because you'll try to find satisfaction in something else that you think won't disappoint you if God has disappointed you. My encouragement to you this morning is, don't deprive God of His rightful place in your worship, even if you're disappointed. Because God has not been the one to disappoint you. Usually, in fact, always, it's rooted in our own failure of understanding proper expectations as it relates to our own lives and God Himself. May the Lord strengthen you and encourage you to walk with God without being disappointed, but particularly without letting that disappointment sully your worship of the Almighty. May the Lord bless you today.